Stanford University.
Welcome to the last lecture of CS193P for the winter term. Today we have a special guest, James Anthony from Inedible Software is here today, going to talk to us about his experience building applications. He's actually a former student of this class and has built up with his partner Edward Marks a successful business building apps. He's going to tell us about that, some of the things to look out for, pitfalls with putting your own apps up, and putting advertising and monetizing your application. So I think that'll be really interesting. Before he dives in, I want to give you a couple announcements. So first, tomorrow afternoon, 4 to 5 in 26113 is our last Friday lecture, and it's Adam Nash from LinkedIn. He's coming to talk to us about his experiences using Core Data and GameKit and building applications for LinkedIn. So I encourage you to come check that out. It should be pretty cool. And then the last thing is about final projects. I think should be well on their way. They're due next Tuesday evening at midnight. And of course, presentations on Thursday. We've talked about this already. If you have any conflicts with Thursday, please let us know, and we will try and find a different way to get, to get a presentation. But otherwise, we're expecting to see some pretty cool stuff next Thursday. Get your slides if you want to include movies as well by next Tuesday evening at midnight, and your code and all that stuff too. So, any questions about that before I move on? No. All right. Well, without further ado, James Anthony, Inedible Software.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. So yeah, as Alan said, I took this class back when it was in its first iteration, worked on a final project, which we wrapped up, put on the store. We've since had 7 million downloads. We do contracting. We do our own internal apps. We talk a lot with different ad networks, ad mediation layers, and analytics companies, all of which I'm going to talk about. So I'm hoping this lecture will kind of give you an insight into what it's like actually trying to make money on the store, hopefully encourage you to pursue your own projects, make sure you didn't run into the same problems we did so that you can really get off the ground running to the best of your abilities. And it's a crazy market. It changes a lot, and it's really fun to try to hold on to. So very quickly, some of the stuff we did. Air Guitar was our first project. It's what we did as our final project here, and then we cleaned it up, put it on the store, and have had a bunch of iterations since. It uses the accelerometer to detect strumming and whammying, so you can play chords. Shotgun Free and Shotgun Pro are by far our most popular apps. One of those silly little dorm room projects that just has to be done, and then it was reviewed on IGN, which gave it this big spike of interest, rose up to #2 on the top free list on its own. And I have to say, most of the initial success I'm going to chalk up completely to dumb luck, because you don't predict that a shotgun you're firing in your dorm room is going to take off like that. But a lot of what we've been working on the past year is figuring out how to keep it in those top 100 lists, how to keep the popularity there, the user base there, and how to monetize them to the best of our ability. POW, another silly little project using the accelerometer. You get to punch and it makes sounds. SongSift was our first foray into the media library. We let you sift through your library looking for different songs. So we had the problem with when you're searching by album or by artist, a lot of the entries only had a single song. So we help aggregate only the complete items in your library. Other things we did for external clients, Mutant Chronicles was a movie that came out with Magnolia Pictures. This app actually never saw the light of day because it was stuck in the app approval process for too long, and the movie came in and out of theaters before we were able to launch it. The good news for all of you is that the approval process is much, much less painless now. Much more painless. Shotgun Free Call of Juarez edition, I'll talk to you about a little later. Ubisoft had a first-person Wild West shooter that came out, and they reskinned our app to do a promotion for it. And then Mycelo Maps is the latest thing we put on the store. We're working with another Palo Alto startup that does indoor mapping technology. Their core competency in business is in building up this map data, but they wanted to have a really slick iPhone client to show off what their maps could do. So they're fully interactive vector maps that we use MapKit to map out all of the locations they have, and then we have full GPS and compass integration, searching favorites, etc. So how to succeed in the App Store. I've basically broken it down into what you need to do. Getting noticed is just getting traction and finding your user base in the first place. Monetizing, obviously, is how to get cash from those users or from advertisers. And then holding your ground. The App Store is a really spiky place. A lot of apps tend to float up to the top and fall off just as quickly. So being able to kind of stay there as long as you can is going to really be the key to eking out every last drop of success you can when you do get one of those hits, because it's so hard to predict. Also, this is the App Store in particular. As an iPhone developer, you're extremely in demand right now, which is the good news. I'm not going to talk about what it's like doing contracting work or trying to work full-time for other companies, but I will say that there's a lot of interest right now, and there aren't a lot of people who can do it. So good for all of you if you're interested in pursuing the opportunities, because you can command a premium, and I'm sure you guys are all top-notch. So how to get noticed. This is one of the most common questions we get is app discovery, how you can ensure something can succeed. There's really no good solid answer, but what I will tell you is that it takes work and that you really have to be proactive about getting your app out there and noticed. I see a lot of people that come, they tell me they worked on this great app, they put it on the store, and they want to know why it didn't go anywhere. And the answer is that submitting your app isn't the last step in the development process. You want to be telling all of your Facebook buddies and posting on your walls. You want to do YouTube videos trying to promote your apps. Send out press releases to every blog you read and every blog your friends read. They're actually really susceptible to it. They love basically reposting your press release word for word. They're looking for content, and they're happy to publish your story. You're not going to get everything, and blogs, while great, haven't shown us the most traffic increases, but you really need every download you can get. The exposure also comes off the top 100 lists, which I'm going to talk hopefully a little more in detail shortly. But basically, at the end of the day, most users are just browsing the App Store, whether it's on device or if it's on their desktop. And so the name of the game is really getting on those 100 lists and staying there. You need big spikes. The top 100 lists are all driven by the downloads on a rolling window, but it's what you've done recently that counts. So you want to puncture that top 100 list so that you can get that initial visibility, and that top 100 list visibility is going to be more than you can get from any other source, more from PR, more than word of mouth. And once you get there, you need the virality to keep boosting. If you get onto the top 100 list and then you kind of float off and die quickly, it probably means your app isn't going to get traction, and unfortunately there's not much you can do from that point other than trying harder and iterating and changing the product. Ideally, once you get that visibility, your app's going to take off on its own. So, how to monetize? People talk about the strategy between free and paid apps and in-app purchases. Sometimes there are apps where it fits into one of those categories really nicely. One of my friends I know who's made more money on the App Store than pretty much anyone I know is making a VNC client that costs $25 a pop. It's not something you hear a lot. It's never been on one of the top 100 lists. It made like the top 200 grossing at some point, I think. That's one of the few cases where you can afford to not worry about the top 100 lists because you don't care about having some massive surge of sales numbers. You just need really steady user base and a really great product. For most of us, however, if you're looking at the $10 price point and below pretty much, the answer is you want to do everything. You want to have a free app because that's just going to promote adoption, and because there's a very strong resistance of people to download paid apps. Even $1, they might hand you $1 on the street, but for some reason users are just really resistant to making that investment because there's a lot of crap on the store and they're nervous about it. And so having a free app lets you hook the users and get in. The conversion rate from a free to a paid user is relatively high. You can expect maybe 1% or 2%, which doesn't sound like much. But if you can get 1,000 times more free users than paid users, and 1% of those convert, then you've just 10x the numbers of paid users you have. The way your money comes in from advertising and paid apps is also very different, and if you're going to try to make a business out of it, it's important to notice that your paid apps, because things are so spiky, you're going to get all your money right up front. So you're going to have that big surge in downloads, everybody's going to use it, pay their $1 or $2 or whatever you're charging, and that's pretty much going to be the end of it. And you're going to hold on, but that money's going to trickle down, but that's your initial surge of capital. Your free users, if you can hold on to them for a long time, is your recurring revenue stream. So it's really powerful to be able to harness both of those together to get that initial influx of money and then to use that to be able to keep sustaining your business. In-app purchases are something that came out later in the life cycle for our applications, but are really powerful. As far as I'm concerned, they're not actually a replacement for a paid and a free version. It would be really nice if they were, but the truth of the matter is these top 100 lists are so powerful that having a paid app on the top 100 list and a free app on the top 100 free is really what you want. You need that balance of both because you now have two sources of revenue. Because those 100 lists have their own life cycles. So we see users going to Shotgun Pro that have never seen Shotgun Free before and don't even know that a free version exists. So they're really almost entities in their own right, even though our intention was to be able to upsell. The upsell isn't all you're looking at. It's actually its own source of revenue. That said, putting in in-app purchases pretty much doubled the amount of paid revenue we're getting. It didn't cut into our paid app at all. So rather than the in-app purchase being a transition where now we just have the free and the in-app to get all the premium features, by keeping that alongside our premium version, we just doubled the amount of paid customers we were getting. Be nimble. I'm going to talk about that later, but this isn't the web. You don't have all of your, depending on the app architecture you have, and we'll talk about how to mitigate this, if something goes wrong in your app, you need to resubmit it to the store. And now that means a day or two. Previously, it was a much bigger problem. But make sure that you have enough controls from the server that, if something goes wrong, you can make adjustments to that as quickly as possible. And that you can switch between different sources of revenue, both in terms of what you have available as an in-app purchase and in terms of what advertising you're sending. CYA. Google it if you don't know what the acronym is, because I understand I'm on the internet and I should be polite. But you're dealing with money. Kind of at the end of the day, and this class is great, and you can make wonderful applications, but as soon as money enters the picture, things get ugly. And it's good to recognize that early on and just know that, you're playing with the big boys now. So, on the theme of CYA, before I talk about kind of advertising in particulars, there's a crop of things called ad mediation layers. And they've saved us many times, and I'm going to highly recommend that you do at least one of these methods. Basically, ad networks are happy to serve you a little UI view or a button, and they'll track their impressions and talk to the server and get advertising like that. You can technically integrate them directly into your app, but I highly recommend against it for a number of reasons. The first and most benign is that no ad network is going to fill 100% of your requests for ads. So that means if you're committed to one ad network, anytime they don't fill your request, you're just throwing that impression away. Other reasons are that there's different kinds of ad networks. Some of them are kind of slow and steady. Some of them are really spiky, but when they have a really good campaign running, you'll get a lot of money. Right now, we're running a lot of ads for the Google app. When that campaign goes away, that advertiser might dry up, but in the meantime, they're doing excellent CPM. CPM stands for cost per 1,000 impressions. You'll hear eCPM, which is the effective CPM, which is done by calculating out different forms of payment. CPC is the cost per click. That's how almost every ad on the iPhone works. On the web, it's a little different. It's usually more impression-based. On the iPhone, what matters are those clicks. So in terms of things you can do for a mediation layer, what mediation lets you do is you integrate directly into your code one of these mediation solutions, and then that lets you tie in a whole bevy of different ad networks, and they do it with different methods. But basically the idea is you want to be in control of your inventory at any time when something goes wrong, be it an ad network library that crashes your app, which has happened to us plenty of times, a dispute with an ad network over payment, which has happened plenty of times, whether it's the fill rate drying up, anything can happen and you need that flexibility. And I may be getting repetitive at some point, but I really want to hammer home that this is going to be key to making sure that you can actually make money at all and make good money at that. So AdWorld was started by a couple ex-Stanford grads, actually. It was recently bought by AdMob. It's an open source solution. They maintain all the servers, but you can actually write your own server code if you want, and they'll give you that code as well. The way AdWorld works is that you sign up for all of the different ad networks on your own, and I'll show you some screenshots of what the interface looks like, and basically you can redirect what percentage of your inventory you want to allocate to different networks. You can set priorities such that if one request fails, it'll roll over to the next, and it can do some automatic optimization. I tend to manually rejigger all the advertising by hand fairly regularly, either on a daily or weekly basis, depending on how steady things are looking. But you should be ready to keep a very close eye on your revenue streams. Tapjoy is another option. They do ad mediation. They also do some cool stuff with offers, where you can do, it's like an OfferPal style thing. Lots of young users, especially on the iPod Touch, either don't have accounts, don't have credit cards, or are just really averse to spending money. So being able to capitalize that on offers like sign up for a free account with Blockbuster and then get 20 of my virtual shotgun dollars to buy guns with is a great way to monetize those users as well. MobClicks is a little different solution than the other ones on here. The way they work is that they actually manage all of your accounts for you. So whereas AdWorld, you go to the ad networks directly and you have accounts with them, and AdWorld is simply a tool to switch between them, MobClicks actually does all of that for you. So you go to their website and you just click buttons up and down the list of which ad networks that you want to enable in your app, and then they do the optimization and you just get one check from MobClicks. .app/ads I put up here for completeness. They're still in beta, but they're another player that's about to enter the mediation space, and that should be interesting too. This is what the AdWorld reporting, one of the pages, looks like. This is shotgun free over a decent period of the last year. One thing to note is just how irregular it is, and that's why it's important to have a mediation tool in here. We had one advertiser here who was doing pretty well until they tanked. And with AdMob, this orange line is our custom ads. So this is us cross-promoting from one of our apps to the other ones. When our ad networks dried up at that point, there was no one we wanted to be serving to. We can put in custom ads for AdWorld. So Shotgun Free at this point was promoting air guitar and promoting POW. The reason we had the massive spike in impressions is because we went from a 30-second timer on our ad refreshes to a 15-second timer. Again, these are all these knobs you have to fiddle with to really optimize what you're doing. We found 30 seconds is about the sweet spot for third-party networks. The reason is that the higher click-through rate you have, the more money you get on a click-by-click basis. So the fact that you're serving twice as many impressions, even though it's great to serve those more impressions, but your click-through rate drops even if the number of clicks you get stays the same, so you end up making less money. When we're serving ads to our own apps, we don't care what the click-through rate is. We just want as many as possible, and we want to keep our ads as fresh as possible. So we're happy to jack it up to 15 seconds because we're paying us the same amount anyway. This big drop-off over here is when we ran the Ubisoft promotion. I have to say that during that period, so we got paid for Ubisoft to do a reskinning for Call of Juarez. During that time, we actually fell off the top 100 list. So doing deals with other big companies can be dangerous because your users basically revolt. We were really excited about the promotion. We thought it was cool. They had really nice artwork that they put in. They had some videos that they put out to promote it, and we were personally excited for it. When it came out on the store, what we were hearing from the users is just the standard, you're a sellout, this was cool, what happened? And it's just kind of something you can't control. And so, be careful with your users, they're fickle. Of course, as soon as we went back to our old artwork, we got just as many complaints about what happened to the cool Wild West artwork. This stuff is all horrible. So, you take what you can get. This is what the AdRoll interface looks like for allocations. They have a list of different networks. As you see, it's up to you to input your own publisher identifier that you get from the various networks. You can allocate by percentage, or as I said, you can have them auto-optimize. And in rollover priorities, which is that second tab, you set how things are going to waterfall down the chain. MobClicks is the other option. This is how you sign up for the different networks. They have a big list of usually around 20. They have this button on the side. You can either check to request a relationship with an advertiser. Some of them will decline you. Some of them will allow you. And then at any time you can disable them. You see we still have one pending that's been there for about 6 months, I think. Our shotgun-free reporting summary. This is just what the dashboard of MobClicks looks like. You can see that we're getting money from a decent mix of advertisers, which is, again, why these mediation layers are so powerful. If we had integrated any one of these, then we wouldn't be nearly as optimized as we are. And you can then see on a graph a corner of revenue is the blue bars and click-through rate is the red line graph. You'll also notice, which I didn't think was that surprising, that usage rates go way up on the weekend. That's actually the opposite of what it tends to be on the internet, where people are browsing Facebook when they're at work. So the cycle is reversed. Knowing is half the battle. So in addition to your advertising and mediation layers, you want analytics and you want to keep a good ear into your users and to know what's going on inside your app when you put it on the store. A lot of our early apps, we didn't know about this. We didn't have analytics from day zero, and that data is gone to us forever. So we don't know what the launch of Shotgun looked like because we thought it was just a silly app. No one was going to care. We were going to throw it on the store and just see what happens. We didn't have advertising in it. We didn't have analytics in it. We lost a ton of money because we didn't have the foresight to think, maybe people would actually be interested. And we also lost a lot of knowledge about the market that would have helped us in our future launches because we didn't have analytics in from ground zero. There are a ton of options in this space. Flurry and Pinch were previously the two biggest, but Flurry just acquired Pinch. We use Flurry for most of our stuff. We like them a lot. MobClick's name is on here again. If you tie in their mediation layer, they have a full suite of analytics features. Localytics is a newcomer that has some cool features. Modally Medialytics, I haven't worked with any of them personally, but they're out there and they're different solutions. Most of these are free, at least in a basic. So all of the mediation I've talked about so far is free or at least transparent to you. And then with the analytics, most of these, at least the base level of functionality, is free. And then, of course, you can roll your own if you want. But it's important to at least be getting some data out of them. The other thing, in addition to the analytics, is listening to your users. Having links in your app to provide feedback, listening to what they're posting on the reviews, having a website, and being responsive to your support has really helped us get in touch with what's going wrong in our apps and helping to smooth that out. So sometimes responding to user feedback, we can see an update version over version, see a full star increase just because people were understanding how to use the app better, people weren't running into the same pitfalls as everyone else. So this is one of my favorite support emails. To illustrate the point, from an irate user using Shaka. This is from air guitar, actually. So the message is, I have a brand new 3GS, and every one of the 10 musical apps I have on it work fine except yours that makes zero noise. I saw I'm not the only one. You should A, start by admitting there's an issue, and B, fix it with an update. Otherwise, I'm going after you on iTunes with Apple. Another common misconception is that we work for Apple. Many people don't understand the way the dynamic of the store works, that Apple's just distributing your stuff, and you are, in fact, your own person. But I've had people threaten to call my boss at Apple many times. So this is the same user 3 minutes later. I just realized my iPhone was on mute. I feel like a douche. Disregard that last email. Sorry. So the answer is have a thick skin because you're going to be getting a lot of these. But the other is that, we didn't disregard the last email. Yes, in one sense, it was his fault. The phone was on mute, and we respect the silent switch, which is generally what you're supposed to do with apps that make noise. But the answer is that we were getting a lot of these emails, and even ourselves were having trouble where we would throw out the fretboard, try to make noise, and then have to take that extra step to remember that our silent switch was on. The phone was on vibrate, and it wasn't making any noise. So in a later version, we added code to detect whether that switch was on and throw an alert view if they try to launch the fretboard with that on. And that's basically made all of these emails disappear. Here's one of the cool features of Flurry. So some of the reasons you might want to use analytics, first of all, just knowing how many users you have. When you talk to advertisers, they want to know what your retention rate looks like. They want to know how many impressions you're serving up. And unless you have some kind of analytics, you don't know any of that. All the App Store is going to tell you is how many downloads you got every day. You have no idea whether your users keep using your app unless you have some kind of analytics in there. Analytics will also give you geographic breakdowns. So if you're thinking about doing localization, it's a good way to target and to know where your potential markets are that you want to capitalize more on. One of the features that I believe is unique to Flurry, at least it was at some point, is tracing user paths. So most of the analytics will allow you to tag different sections in your code to send off what's either called a beacon or an event or anything of that nature that lets you tag things the user is doing. What Flurry does is it breaks it down into user paths. So you can see what order the user is following in terms of your application, and you can figure out whether they're understanding how to use your app as you intend it to. One common way this is used is in game developers who have a free version and a paid version, and they try to get an upsell going to the premium content from the limited demo version. What they can do with user paths is figure out what level their users are getting to. Because if the users are getting too far along and then getting disinterested and stopping, they're not going to be able to get an upsell because the user has already had more of the game than they want to. If you do it too early on, then the users don't really understand the game mechanics, they don't get hooked enough. So you really want to optimize and find that sweet spot as to when the upsell should happen. And with analytics, you can figure out exactly how far into the game they're getting. So this is a case study from air guitar again. Air guitar, we've had great success with demoing it in person to people. Being able to explain to people how to use it via an instruction screen and tutorial video has been a challenge. So that's one of the things we've been looking at is how we can increase user interaction and make them really understand it. So this is in version 1. This is across all versions, so you can see start session is the initial path I've taken. Most of them go straight to the fretboard. Some of them view the preferences, about pages, etc. You can then do a breakdown by version. So this is version 1.3. and then you can change your route. So this is when they're viewing the fretboard, when they're playing the song, what do they do afterwards? So 55% at this point ended the session, 22% viewed the preferences screen, 20% viewed the frets again, so presumably they just missed it and then just came right back, and 2% viewed the about page. In version 1.4, we changed out the tutorial videos. We break them into smaller segments, and we added more in-depth textual instructions. You can see the people that viewed the preferences went up 5% to 27, and the people that ended the session went down 5% to 50. So 5% of our users who were quitting after the first time they viewed the fretboards were now staying around and came back to play with the app more. And that's something that we know only because of the analytics data we got. The next thing you're going to have to deal with is how to hold your ground. The top 100 list, as I've said, are really key. And they look different on the desktop and on the device. And if you're going to be serious, it's really important to look into how your users are interacting with the store. What your description looks like, your icon and the title of your app are probably the two single most important things you can work on. When you're looking at a big list of apps, that's all you have to sell yourself on. So it's worth paying those extra, $100, $200 to get a really nice icon done if you're not particularly graphically inclined yourself. Think really hard about what the title says in the store. The top 100 lists are broken down in a lot of different ways. They're broken down by free and paid. They're broken down by category. But more importantly is knowing what's above the fold and below the fold when you're viewing it on a browser, knowing that on the device you only see the top 25, I think, and then you click to show more and you get another 25, but you don't see more than that. Knowing that you can get the RSS feeds of the top 200, even though I'm sure almost none of your users are going to. That's data at your disposal to know how close you are. And there are all of these discrete jumps in visibility, and you'll see them as you're tracking your application's growth. So going from number 36 to 35 maybe doesn't make that big a difference in terms of visibility, but going from number 26 to 25 is gigantic. And knowing when you're close to one of those thresholds and when it's time to make a push is going to help you really make the most out of the effort you're putting into getting your app noticed. Updates are really important. We see, we can actually translate from an update into our increase in usage how much money we make when we spend a week putting out a new version. Your update numbers don't go into the top 100 rankings, but what they do is they make your users update and pull out the app and play with it. And that's really powerful because, again, if your app is catchy, then it's viral and people like showing it off to their friends. So when you refresh the app, it becomes active again in their mind. They're going to use it more. And in addition to you getting more ad revenue because their usage times are up, they're going to show it to your friends, and you're actually going to see a download spike as well. Paying for advertising is something that we do on a selective basis. There are some new models coming out where you can do pay per install, so you know exactly how much you're spending to get every download of your app. Otherwise, you can look at something like an ad mob where you pay on a click-based thing, and keeping your conversion rate up is up to you. Buying your way up the charts isn't easy and it's not fun, and I don't recommend it. But at least for Shotgun Free, for example, after the Ubisoft promotion, we were down off the top 100 list and we wanted back. So we put out some updates and we got ourselves close. We got to 104 on our own Steam. We poured a little bit of cash into it, just enough to get us up to 99. Then on its own Steam, just from the additional exposure of that, it rose up to number 80 completely on its own. So targeted advertising is really the name of the game. Don't just throw money at it. Actually know why you're spending the dollars and take the time. I mean, you're Stanford students, you're smart. Look at the analytics, figure out how many times your users return. Try to guess how many friends each user is going to bring in. Really do the math and figure out what a user is worth to you. Knowing when to fold. So at some point, your application is probably just going to outlive its lifetime. Something like a Facebook is going to be on the top 100 list forever, but that's not true of all apps. When your app is kind of losing steam, as Shotgun Free has pretty much done at this point, even though it had a really great long run, figure out, first of all, whether it's worth throwing into resources, even if it's your pet project and you love it. If it's not gaining the traction it needs to, maybe it's time to look at a different project. But also figure out how to roll those users into your next project. So for Shotgun, we could keep pounding out updates and keep trickling up little by little. Our plan is actually to release a complete sequel to it, Shotgun Duel, where we're going to introduce some multiplayer features, online leaderboards, etc. The point is, the top 100 list, as I said, are king. An update isn't going to give you the massive spike of users that having a completely new app that you can throw all of your old users into with a single push notification. You'll notice that's what Tap Tap Revenge does, version over version. They do incremental updates on the store, but they very regularly come out with a totally new version, Tap Tap Revenge 2, Tap Tap Revenge 3, and they get back right up to the top in the top 10s every time. Other apps like the iMafia, iMobs of the world, you'll notice they have iMob 28 respect points. The reason they do this is because they can keep submitting unique apps with iMob 32 respect points, iMob 26 respect points. Instead of doing updates using Apple's built-in update cycle, the way they do it is by telling all of their users to go to the store, download the new version of the app, which they bill as just a standard upgrade. They get respect points for doing it, which is how they incentivize their users to do it. And now they have a fresh app where all of those updates are now counting towards the top 100 list, and they rise back up to the top. So, you know, getting up to those top 100 lists is what matters, and at a certain point, rolling your users into a new app is essential. Other things to know about downloads: about 25% of users only download to the device, 25% only download to the desktop, and 50% will do both. So right now, I think the download cap was just increased to 20 megabytes for over-the-air downloads. So before 10 megs was a little more of a challenge. 20 megs really shouldn't be a problem. So keep the download sizes small. A lot of users are still on Edge, and even 3G isn't all that hot a lot of times. So you want to make sure your users can actually get to your content. If you have a big app, then doing in-app advertising on other platforms might not make a lot of sense, because your users are going to be much more reluctant to do the download when they're on the phone, and by the time they've gotten home, they've forgotten about it. Here's AppViz, or a screenshot from AppViz. AppViz is a desktop client which will download your numbers from the iTunes store and let you track your ranking over time. So these are the numbers of downloads we had over Shotgun Free, and I'm going to use it to talk about a few things. So right up, that initial spike was our climb up to top number 2. So we were at around 140,000 downloads for Shotgun Free on the day we hit number 2 back in March of '09. This is Christmas. I loved my Christmas bonus. It was awesome. But that big spike, which was our biggest single download day of our app's lifetime, was about number 54 when it had been number 2 back in March. So your job is a lot harder now. The competition is definitely out there, and these numbers are big. You can't buy your way up this list. That said, the entertainment not entertainment, but the paid categories, especially in niche markets like news, a handful of downloads can make the difference. So if you can get 10 downloads of a $1 news application, you can crack the top 100 in news right then and get the exposure you need. Entertainment is one of the tougher categories. Games is the hardest, but with games you have subcategories. So picking your target, picking your category well is going to help you with exposure. And then a couple things I talked about earlier. Right over here, this little decline, which is pretty zoomed out, is when we had our Ubisoft promotion and fell off. We kind of languored in obscurity. This is when we did our big ad buy, and then you can see it actually rose without just a few update bumps, et cetera. Rather than trailing off the top 100 list, it kept rising back up. And you can see now, after this big Christmas spike, when we're looking at these numbers, they're holding pretty steady, but they're not as high as we'd like, which is why we made the decision to make the push to rewrite our code base and come out with a brand new Shotgun Duel. Cool, so that's all the prepared remarks I had, but there's certainly plenty more to talk about. I'd love to take question and answers from anybody who's curious. Yeah?
Yeah, you referred to buying your way into the top 100. That's not actually sending Apple money and move you up the list.
No, it's sending money into the ether and hoping it magically converts into downloads. But yeah, it's called pay-per install when you're dealing with, Tapjoy does it. Flurry has a new product called App Circle that's still in beta, but it'll allow you to do that. OfferPal is doing it, and they set price points. It's anywhere usually from 25, 50 cents or so for a free download, and then usually like, I think it's 150% of a paid application price or something. It varies on who you're doing it from. Those are great because you know exactly what you're getting for the price. The issue with them right now is that they can't sustain particularly high volumes at the moment. So the other issue with trying to pay to get yourself all the way up there is, even if you can afford it and you want to, there's just not that much inventory in the iPhone market that you can buy. So if you go to AdMob and you pay 5 cents a click for an impressions, they'll sell it, but they'll sell it eventually. And as I've kind of alluded to, the name of the game with all of these top 100 lists is spikes. If you're going to dump money, you want to burn as much money as possible in as short a time window as possible. And to do that on someone like an AdMob, you have to start spending 7, 10 cents a click. So you're paying a premium for the exact same inventory. It's just that to get that priority in the list, to be able to get the big push you want, is going to cost more. And so those costs escalate really fast.
Can you go back to your graph on the previous page?
Yeah.
So the big spike to 140,000 on your first spike.
Yeah.
Is that really 2 weeks after you release?
Yeah. It really happens that quickly. So very quickly we got this IGN coverage, which was wonderful. An IGN blog that talks about mobile apps talked about how he was running around the office shooting zombies with his shotgun, and it was the best thing ever, which was wonderful for us. And we saw it's basically an exponential rise, kind of like you'd expect. You get onto for us it was the entertainment top 100 free. You see yourself do a nice fat rise, and then as I said, you get all of these bumps as you hit the certain milestones and get more visible. So the top 50, top 20 is when on the front page of the entertainment store you're listed in that little sidebar. Top 10 of the store overall, I think right now is what's on the front page of the store. It was 5 for a while. I lose track, so keep an eye on it. But yeah, it just accelerates really fast. And you can see that, it takes a lot of downloads to get up into the top 100. Even a year ago, it took a sizable chunk. And getting from, number 10 to number 2 was just as hard as getting from probably number 100 to 110. So.
Does that compare to the paid version?
The paid version, the graph looks pretty similar. There's a big spike at the beginning, and then it trails off. It trailed off a little more rapidly because most of our advertising dollars went into Shotgun Free, and because at some point, so the ad networks and ad market have all matured dramatically in the past year. We're seeing way, way higher CPMs than we ever were, and we're actually, as of at least a month ago or so, we're making more money on Shotgun on a week-by-week basis now than we were at our peak user base, which is great news in terms of being able to monetize even a relatively smaller number of users. But as that CPM started rising, it started to be effectively more expensive for us to promote our own apps. So it started to not be worth it for us to push Shotgun Pro because we were actually making more money using that ad space to promote our own apps. And on that note, cross-promotion is one of the most powerful tools you have. If you get even a relatively small user base across 3, 4, 5 of your own apps, these are users who are loyal to you. If they like what you're doing, they're probably users that think like you and are interested in the same things that you are. And that's an incredibly powerful targeted audience to push apps to. So when we come out with a new release, we can switch a knob on our ad mediation, turn on all 100% custom ads, and it costs money because we're not incurring that ad revenue. But whereas with an AdMob, you have to pay a premium to get the priority ad spots to be able to do a big push. We have complete control over our Shotgun user base. We have about 1 million active users a month. So when we turn that dial in one day and every Shotgun Free user is looking at an ad for the app that we're trying to promote, that's generally enough of a bump to at least get it onto the top 50 or so of whatever category we're looking at. So if you can build up a stable of a bunch of small but solid apps that your users are happy with, then you've got a captive audience that would love to see what the next thing you're going to come out with is. Yeah?
So can you give us an idea of how much work it is to incorporate all these analytics and also the ad serving stuff into your application?
Yeah, so the question was how hard it is to actually do all this work and to integrate advertising and analytics. Most of these libraries are actually very easy to use. They're designed to be as minimally invasive as possible. They're third-party libraries, which in terms of code means we see crashes that aren't under our control, and that never makes me happy. So that's definitely a downside. But it's important to be social with these guys, talk to them. We have contacts in at pretty much every ad network we work with, all the mediation companies, all the analytics companies that we work with. And having an email or a phone number to call is really valuable when you run into issues. Either it's because you're being dumb and you can't figure out how to integrate it, or if it's because you're seeing crashes and it's a problem on their side. You want to have a voice. The analytics libraries tend to be extremely simple. It's usually one call you put into the app delegate that notifies their servers that a session has started, and then as complicated as you want in terms of throwing off tags when different events occur, but it's generally pretty straightforward. The mediation layers are kind of as complicated or as easy as you want to. You can integrate mob clicks directly, and at that point, it's just like integrating a single library, and you get again, as complicated or as not complicated as you want to. You can either fire it off and start working, or you can start reporting user demographics if you have access to it, which can increase your CPMs. You can report user location. If you have an app that has a legitimate use for the user location, you shouldn't bug them to get that approval, and I think Apple has now started rejecting apps that do so. So be careful about what you ask your users for if you don't have a legitimate excuse to. So MobClicks gets you off the ground running pretty fast. AdWorld, you need to actually download the SDKs for each of the networks that you want to integrate individually. And they handle most of the code side things, but you need to actually go out, download, come up with different accounts for each network. You know, it's a couple days' work that you should be prepared for. I like using AdWorld over MobClicks directly. So we use MobClicks. We send them lots of our ads, but we actually wrap it under an AdWorld mediation layer right now. The reason for that is simply that MobClicks is the one that cuts us our check. And just from a philosophical standpoint, we want a level of protection from any revenue stream we have. So we trust MobClicks. Things have been going well for us so far, and we're good friends with the guys, and they buy us lunch all the time. But just as a matter of principle, I'm not going to put any code directly into my app that I'm dependent on for revenue.
Which one is the simplistic analytics plugin that you recommend?
So the question was the simplest analytics. Right now, I think Flurry is pretty much the market leader. They have a really solid suite of features that have satisfied everything we've needed up to now. I know a lot of companies tend to do more custom analytics when they want to look at more sophisticated things. Bigger social games where you really care about the intricacies, about the interactions between your different users, you might want something a little more hardcore. But Flurry is totally free, really simple to integrate, and from what I could tell, the code base has been very stable, so I've been happy with them.
What's the catch with Flurry being totally free?
So they're working on their App Circle, which is currently the way they're monetizing. The question was, what's the catch with Flurry? So Flurry previously had a lot of premium features that they tried to upsell you to, which I think they're still pursuing, but is less a core part of their business from what I can tell. The App Circle program is based on pushing ads to other applications from your own app. They do a recommendation engine that's based on all the analytics data that they've been gathering up to this point, and they continue to. So they have a massive install base. They know what's going on most phones in the market. So they're able to take that data, look at what apps are used in conjunction, build out an algorithm to generate recommendations, and they think that they can do higher CPMs by doing a pay-per-install model, as I said. So if you want to advertise with them, you pay per install, and then, so I think it's, I don't want to quote any numbers because I'm going to get it wrong, but you pay some nominal fee per install that you're interested in from Flurry. They then put you into the recommendation engine and figure out what apps should serve your ad. So that's their current attack. And I should say, for full disclosure, as I said, I work with, pretty much everybody that I've talked about, and go out to lunch with them and chat. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I'm being as impartial as I can.
So, if you're not as interested in like the business side and like kind of doing all of this analytics and things, like, is a good option to like try to buddy up with someone who is, or is there like do you know of anyone who's like willing to do it for like a fee that is like well established and just like takes care of it for you?
Yeah, so the question was what to do if you're not interested in the business side of things. So partnering up with somebody, I think, is a solid move. There are some companies that like buying up apps when they're successful. So if you can get a good burst of success, you might be able to sell off your app to someone who's interested more in the longevity of it. I don't know of any services off the top of my head that kind of you can outsource your business side to. Finding a friend at Stanford who's interested in it, go for it. I don't know whether iPhone companies, smaller companies in general, tend to like taking on other products and kind of putting them under their own label. You're welcome to send me off an email, and I can see what I can think of if I know anybody who'd be interested in talking to you. And yeah, I have that. So my email address is up here, james@Medable.Software. All of you should feel free to email me anytime with any questions. And there's some business cards later if you want to pick one up. Al?
So I know you guys have had phone calls from people asking you to build apps. Yet clearly you guys are focused on building your own apps and have had success with that. Tell us a little bit about that market of being like an iPhone developer in this growing space and why you guys chose to focus on your own things.
Yeah. So the question was about doing iPhone work on contract and why we've chosen to skew more towards working on our own projects. There's a lot of interest from a lot of people on building iPhone apps. We personally aren't as interested in it. It's always more fun working for yourself than working for a client. When you want to take ownership over your code, if nothing else, and you want to be proud of your project, it's hard to do if you're getting paid a check and just have a project to do to pay the bills. One of the apps that I showed earlier, Mycello, that we worked with, is a fellow startup. So we worked on that project actually largely for equity because we thought they had a really cool technology, something that we weren't going to build in-house, but that was a cool platform to build off of. So we wanted to partner with them. One of the things that's nice about being an iPhone developer, if you're good at it, you are in demand, and so you can talk to people and take the projects that you want and not take the projects that you don't. There are a lot of people interested in hiring developers on contract. You've got to make a good pitch for why you're a better option than outsourcing to, there's a lot of companies that are in, I'm trying to think, I've heard of Poland, India, Hungary, some places in the Middle East, Argentina. They're all over the place, and they can build an iPhone app for $1,000 or $2,000. That's, in most cases, good enough. So if you're going to do contract work, make sure you're working with someone who's actually going to pay you what you're worth. Don't be afraid to put out a bid that's too high and get turned down. Don't undersell yourself. Figure out what this time commitment is actually worth to you. We work with individuals now and then. Some of our advertising actually comes in direct sales from people who are interested in selling into into Shotgun, and we talk to them one-on-one. It can be really nice because you're talking to a human being. If it's another developer, then you're helping them out, which is cool. They tend to pay much more promptly. Another good thing to know, Apple generally pays on a 90-day lag. So, from the day you make your sale on the store, you're not going to see any of that money until 90 days later. Ad networks aren't much better depending on who you're working with. It's generally 45 to 90 days. If you have a bad client, it might be even harder trying to actually get cash out of them. Hopefully it doesn't go to litigation, but you never know when you're dealing one-on-one. You have to be prepared if you're going to do something on a contract basis. Do a little research, at least have a boilerplate contract, make sure you explain what service you're providing, make sure it's very clear how long your relationship is going to last, what's a bug and what's a feature, all of that. It's tricky working with people. Working for yourself, you get to choose your projects, you get to choose your timetable, and you work on the ones you care about, which is kind of why we went in that direction. Yeah?
Is there a way to know how the app is behaving when it is being downloaded by users? So for example, it crashes or there is a bug. How do you get to know?
So things you can do for crashing. Apple actually gives you crash reports, which is great. In iTunes Connect, which you'll learn about if you start submitting applications to the store, maybe you have already, has a crash log tab, and it'll do a breakdown by iPhone OS version, what the most common crashes are, what the most common timeouts on launch and quit are. Timeouts on quit, actually really important. It's easy to think that when you quit your app, it's done, and if it crashes on quit, it doesn't really matter. First of all, you're going to have possibly corrupted data state after that, so you want to be careful. The other thing is that if your process doesn't actually die and the user tries to reopen the app, they're going to see the last instance reopen, and then it's going to look like a crash when the quit finally succeeds. So getting out of the way fast, an application will terminate, as I'm sure Alan has already drilled into you, is actually an important thing to do. Other things for crash reporting, Flurry, I keep harping on Flurry because I use them, so I know them pretty well. They let you set an uncaught exception handler, and then they'll report to their servers when a crash occurs with some information. I've actually found the Apple crash logs more useful because they come with a stack trace. And I believe if you use the Flurry exception handler, it doesn't make it to the Apple crash reporting system, so that, as far as I can tell, is an either-or thing. That and users tell you about it. If you have an email address, and I think you have to have a support email address to submit to the App Store, and then if you have a website and if you have an email link in your app, which I definitely recommend, if things are going wrong, you'll hear about it.
So you can update your app and it takes about 2-3 weeks to fix that, right?
So updates right now are lightning fast. They're anywhere from, I've had it happen in 8 hours, and I've had it take a month, but lately it's been around 3 days.
But I guess you should be doing a lot of testing before putting it on the App Store for the first time.
Yeah, you don't want to make your users your beta testers. You're going to get bad star ratings, and they generally aren't particularly happy. I hate shipping code with bugs. Like, it sucks. But at some point, you also just want to get it out the door and see if users are responding to it at all.
I'm sorry if this is obvious, but is there a way to test within a group? Can you share your application with some?
Yeah. So the question is how to test with your friends in a group, doing a beta test before you release to the store. There's something called ad hoc distribution that you're able to do with a developer account. You make a build, instead of being provisioned for the App Store, you provision it for specific device IDs. So you have to get the UDIDs of any users that you want to involve in your beta test, and then you make a profile for that, and you can distribute it to them. And there are instructions for that up on Apple's site. Cool. Anything else?
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, that wraps up the class. Again, tomorrow we got Adam Nash coming from LinkedIn to come speak. That's the last lecture. Next Thursday, final presentations. So good luck, everybody. Good luck on finals, and we'll see you in a week.
For more, please visit us at Stanford.